Happy Derby, everyone. Welcome to our review, our look at the Derby 147 and the opportunity to put together what has become a kind of a huge puzzle that we follow over the last 6 months, a puzzle of prep races across the country. And we come down to this last weekend, and the last piece of the puzzle will fall into shape about 7 o'clock on Saturday night, the first Saturday in May. And we're delighted to have with us today Ellis Starr, who is the National Racing Analyst for Equibase. And Ellis, I know you like being a personal handicapper for folks. We have a great group of people here tonight. And so we're looking forward to your analysis of Derby 147. If you could tell me just a little bit, this is an interesting occupation that you have. How did you get to be the Uber handicapper?
Well, thanks, Gary. First of all, that name Uber Capper, which is my Twitter handle and presence, that was chosen by my son when he was a teenager many years ago. And he just said, Uber means best. He goes, I think you should have a nickname. Everybody has a nickname, so your nickname should be Uber Capper. So that's how I got that. But in terms of getting to this place, I suppose, I'm a racing fan first and foremost. I've been going to races for 50 odd years. And as a racing fan, of course, other things in life, it's interesting how life takes you in certain directions. I had a business in California. It was a family business, and met some people that also liked the races. I met a gentleman who became my mentor, the late Dick Mitchell, who wrote a number of books on handicapping the races, and just became enamored with the sport in terms of the puzzle, as you mentioned, and moving on. And then about 20 years ago, I went to work for Equibase, which is the database of the thoroughbred industry, all the data for anybody that's ever been to the races around the country that gets a form or a program. All that data comes from Equibase. It tracks the horses' histories. It's a division of the Jockey Club, for those who are curious, which is the breed registry. So anybody that's ever had a purebred dog is the American Kennel Club. The Jockey Club is the thoroughbred breed registry. So all horses have to trace their lineage to thoroughbreds, and Equibase is more of the wholesale retail arm of that. I started blogging, writing things about 20 years ago, and then moved into this, which is so much fun, even pivoting to virtual, being able to talk to people about horse racing itself, how to bet, how to look at the races. There's nothing more fun, as you know, and people listening know, than looking at a program, picking a horse, betting a couple bucks on it, and watching it run, and hopefully cashing a ticket. So that's what I try and do, and that's how I got to where I am.
What is your first memory of the Kentucky Derby?
Oh, I have to think back to probably Go for Gin back in the mid-'70s, I suppose. And that was just a tremendous, one of the bigger ones, and coming down the stretch and the horses changing position and all that. And then, of course, since I've been in Kentucky since 2000, I've been to almost every one, and some of the tremendous performances, particularly American Pharoah at the first leg of the Triple Crown, the first Triple Crown in decades, was very exciting.
Let me ask you this. I know that, a lot of us go out to the racetrack in the morning, we see the horses in person, and there are two different ways, I think, of handicapping, actually more. But do we believe our eyes when we see these wonderful thoroughbreds, or do we believe the numbers on the printed page?
Well, that's a great question, because handicapping, which I'll just define quickly, is the art of predicting the past from the future. And the future from the past, I should say, is no different than when you analyze stocks or other things in life, commodities, purchases, etc. You make a decision based on your history and the history. And handicapping itself is much more art than science. I mean, these are the equivalent of starting with the 2-year-olds in the fall, maybe 12 to 15-year-old boys and men for the male horses. And on Derby Day, one of them is going to emerge a man. At this time of year, they're starting to mature. Horses are fully mature at 5, so they're 3 now. But horses all have January 1st as a birthday. So some of these horses may have been born in January as late as May 3 years ago. And so some may not be. And I always like to do this fun analogy where I tell people, look, if you have 2 toddlers and you stick them next to each other, let's say they're 18 months old, and one could be 3 or 4 inches taller than the other, but the one that's shorter could be more precocious and saying more words. Horses are the same way. They mature at different rates. They love running. They're well taken care of. They love responding. And they're still improving at this point in their careers in terms of physical and mental. So I would say what you see with your eyes is what you see. except for the fact that horses still may not have run their best race, and the light bulb may have not totally got on until 7 o'clock, or she say 6:57, I think is the post time for the Derby on Saturday.
Yeah, yeah. Pat Day once told me that you cannot win the Kentucky Derby at the post position draw, but you can lose it at the draw. Has past week's post position draw changed your mind at all?
No, I was interested to see one of my contenders, who we'll get to, Known Agenda, got the rail, and traditionally that was really verboten. But that was when Churchill used two gates. They used the 1 to 14 and then 15 to 20, and there was a gap, and the outside gate turned in, and it was really close. Since 2 years ago, they used it first time last fall for the postponed Derby. They bought a gate from Australia where they routinely run 20 and 30 horse fields. It's a much different thing. I've watched last year's Derby and one race this year. They tested the gate already, and the rail is not as bad. It's still bad in terms of you've got 19 horses all trying to save ground. They're going to get close to the rail in that quarter-mile run to the first turn. But it's not bad. And as far as other posts, no, not really. I use the analogy, this is where it gets more to science than art, in statistics, which I do use somewhat. When someone said many years ago, Big Brown was the 20 position, no one ever won from the 20, I had to ask him how many Derbies there were and then how many Derbies had been run with a 20. And the answer was at that time 130 or so Derbies and maybe 60 or less with 20 horses. I said, that's not a sample size. All those rules don't mean they're fun to talk about. Absolutely. So when you say no horses won, for example, from the one position for 20 years, it's okay, but it's meaningless. It depends on the horse's position and its running style itself. So I'm not as concerned about that as I would be a lot of other things in the race, like how they're going to get into their position they need to be in the first quarter when everybody's trying to jockey for a good spot.
Okay. All right. Listen, that's good news for Known Agenda, I think, in the one hole. So I'll tell you what, sometimes I pick the horses, but I make the mistake in how I bet the horses. Ellis Starr joins us once again, and Ellis, part of the magic of picking a winner in the Kentucky Derby is how you bet the horse, and there are a lot of different ways. Give me some background on the best ways to approach betting on a Kentucky Derby.
Well, Gary, let me back up for a minute because I know I'm talking to all kinds of racing fans that may go often or not. And I love to go over the basics because I think demystifying some of this is really easy. So let me start by saying that everything we win at the racetrack is a function of how many other people we're sharing the winning bets with. The racetrack just takes a commission. It doesn't care whether you win or lose. And so, for example, if you're in the majority with a winning ticket, you're going to get less money. You're still going to win. And if you're in the minority with a winning ticket, less people have bet on that combination, for example, you're going to get more money. And that really makes it easy to understand. So if the basic bets are win, place, and show. Win is for first, place is first or second. Both the first and second horses pay to place, and show is first, second, and third. So using that same example I just gave, there's only one horse that's going to win. There's only one set of winning tickets. You're going to get more money, and that's reflected in the odds on the board. So, for example, if you bet a horse that's 10 to 1, if you bet $1, you're going to get $11 back, $10 profit. If you bet a horse to place, you're going to get about half that because you're splitting your money with other sets of bettors that have either the first or the second place horse, and show first, second, and third. There's nothing wrong with those bets. We'll also be talking about the Derby, particularly people sometimes want to take a swing. They want to go for the baseball analogy, the double or the home run. The exacta, in which you win based on who comes in first and second. You play that in various ways. The way most people understand the exacta is an exacta box, which is starting with the minimum number of horses, 2 horses, because you need 1 to come in first and second. You box and you win whether they come in first and second in any order, like 1, 2, or 2, 1. But you can play more than that. In the Derby, we might even talk about betting 5 or 6 horses in the Derby because you've got 20 and you want to bet enough to increase your chance of winning without like going crazy. The other bet people will talk about a lot, especially for Derby, is a trifecta. And that's first, second, and third. That has a much lower minimum, just 50 cents per combination. And you'd probably play it in a box as well. So for example, if you took 5 horses in the Derby, there's actually 60 combinations, and that's a $30 bet. It sounds like a lot, but it's 30 out of over 6,000 possibilities. But if you win, you're going to get paid with that because you're going to be sharing your money with less people. So that's the basic betting terminology I think everybody should understand as we go through the contenders and other ways. Now, as for betting the Derby, I'll say I always tell people not only is it fun, But this is where people should be a little more risk tolerant. They might be, don't bet above your means, but have some fun. I kind of use the cliche, take the rubber band off the wallet a little bit. There's no reason in the Derby not to bet 2 or 3 horses to win. You might bet your top choice to win. Let's say it's 5 or 6 to 1, but this long shot that's 30 to 1. I mean, you'd be kicking yourself if you didn't make a bet. Bet $2 to win place in the show on a couple of 30 to 1 or 50 to 1 horses. There's nothing wrong with it in this kind of a race. And the same thing with the exacta. We probably bet more combinations than we normally bet because we want to have a decent chance of winning. And maybe we might double our money, but we might win 5 or 6 times what we bet in that kind of a wager in a big field like the Derby.
What you're talking about is what I call a saver bet. What I will do is I'll do my serious betting on the Kentucky Derby, but then at the end, I'll sprinkle $2 around the long shots. And many times that if the long shot comes in and my horses don't come in that I bet in the serious bets, I'll save the day with one of those saver bets.
That's absolutely a good strategy. I remember my wife went a couple of years ago and she decided to bet every horse in the field, which I totally don't like the idea of, but that was the year that Maximum Security was disqualified and Country House paid $100 and she was very happy. So, if she had just bet 3 or 4 of the 50 to 1 shots, she would have cashed that bet as well. There's you don't want to be able to say, oh, I bet the Derby winner just to say you do it. But because there's so many horses and we talk about the public can misjudge, forgive me, an asset, and I might be thinking a horse might have a 5% chance to win. That even with my experience, if you ran the race 100 times, a horse would win 5 in 100. But the public might think the horse has a 2% chance to win. I'll make the bet if they're wrong because that's a profit. I mean, it's a fun thing to do in the Derby. So you wouldn't go crazy, but certainly do it.
The one thing that's fun about the Derby also, it is an opportunity with 20 horses in the race. It's an opportunity for big balloons. I've seen $7,000 trifectas and so forth. You really have a chance here to turn a good profit.
Well, for people that are at Derby parties, I always talk, or when they do have live events, which I do a lot of at Derby, with people put their money together, and they might come up with, $30, $40 a person at 50 people. They have $1,500 they want to spend. They do take some shots, and there's nothing wrong with them. Everybody's got a very small investment, like a syndicate, like a racehorse ownership syndicate. But if you have even a couple $100 that you can get some friends together, take a shot, play a trifecta that has very little chance to win, but you could win thousands on doing it. This is the opportunity you don't see very much in horse racing to get those kind of returns. And it doesn't take all long shots. You could have a favorite winning and 2 or 3 horses that are long shots coming in second and third, and all of a sudden your trifecta is paying $1,000 on a 50-cent bet. Now it may have cost you $100, but that's still a huge profit on that wager.
Yeah, I have to mention this opportunity is past, but I made most of the money that I made on last year's Derby on a futures bet. I bet $2 on Authentic at 50 to 1, and I think it's in November. Tell us a little about and the opportunity will come up once again later in the year. Futures betting is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It all used to be Las Vegas, and now Churchill Downs offers 3 or 4 times a year where you could bet horses that might mature months later. And of course, if the horse doesn't run, you don't get a refund. But for the ones that do run, there's 2 goals there. So let's say you were going to bet Essential Quality, for example, who's going to be the 2 to 1 favorite or lower odds. If you could have gotten even 10 to 1 on him back in November or December, that's great. Anytime you can get higher odds on the future bet than on Derby Day, you don't have to bet the horse to win on Derby Day. And there's also a futures exacta as well, where you can have an exacta. Most of those future bets early, there's all 23 horses plus there's all others. And at that time, until they start to assert themselves in the preparatory races, most of the all others are going to be the horses you're going to end up with. But when you can nail a particular horse like you do with Authentic, specifically, you can get some great value.
My best one, Ellis, I saw a horse in Florida running the Holy Bull Stakes one year who finished well up the track. His name was Funny Side. I came at $2 at 100 to 1. And Funny Side, I got him at 100 to 1 and I got him 50 to 1. So I won $300 on Derby Day. on funny side. Let's get back to the handicapping of Derby 147, and now we're going to go through some specifics about this field, and hopefully Ellis can be your personal handicapper that can perhaps lead to cashing a few tickets on the first Saturday in May. Ellis, I'll tell you what, if you've been following Kentucky horse racing for the last year, you know that the young trainer Brad Cox has won 4 Breeders' Cups and has 2 significant entries in this Kentucky Derby. I think most people think inevitably that Brad Cox, as good as he is going to win a Derby. Is this the year?
It's very possible. I mean, Brad Cox is a Louisville native. He grew up on the backstretch blocks from Churchill. His family works with him in the barn. As with a lot of trainers, as they get better, they become more spotlighted, and bigger owners and breeders will send horses to him, and that's been his way, but he's treated them very well. Essential Quality is Brad Cox's #1 starter in the race. The other is Amanda Loon. And Essential Quality is one of 3 undefeated horses in the race, and you can't knock that. He's 5 for 5. He won all 3 races as a 2-year-old. He was our 2-year-old champion because he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. As most horses, it took time off to mature, came back at 3, and he's won both starts, including the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes last month at Keeneland. Certainly, he's a legitimate favorite. Legitimate means that he doesn't have a lot of knocks. There are people that will take stands against him, and you can take a stand. We can talk about reasons why he might not win. But he's not a standout, but he is a legitimate favorite in terms of most people will bet on him because they see a horse that's 5 for 5, and he's done nothing wrong in his career so far.
Mm-hmm. The other Cox horse, of course, is Mandaloon, and he drew a great post position in #7. And actually, on the track at Churchill Downs, I think has been more dynamic and promising in his workouts than Essential Quality.
I think it's absolutely correct. I heard a lot of people with buzz leading up the Derby, which is important because Churchill is a deep, sandy track. Some horses like and don't. And he had won at Churchill Downs, which is also important in his 2-year-old career. I have to say, one of the things I do is I have kind of rules. When you get to this 20 and very small shades of gray between one horse or another, I draw lines in the sand. And personally, the last 5-6 years, any horse that wasn't first, second, or third in their last race, I can't consider a win contender. Now, it doesn't mean he can't rebound and run really well. He won the Risen Star Stakes in Hot Springs, Arkansas, but then he was 6th in the Louisiana Derby, and there's no case to be made for an excuse like traffic or other reasons. He just didn't fire. So using kind of a cliche, I don't think you can get here from there in terms of winning, but I do hear a lot of things about him really going well. And of course, every horse in this field, Gary, fans don't know, is trying a 1.25 miles for the first time. Anyone that's a runner knows that at some point, and especially a longer race as a human, you hit a wall. A number of these horses, no matter their training and their breeding and their ability and their mindset, are going to hit a wall about 1 1/8 miles into the race. And it won't be they stop, but they're going to stop running as hard as they would. And the ones that still have anything left in that last 1/4 mile will be the top finishers in the Derby.
Every Derby that I have ever seen, a few were just, everybody almost stopped running at 1 1/8 miles, and a few staggered home. And of course, there are a couple of that ran away from the field, but that seems to me like you say, at 1 1/8 miles they hit a wall, and the winner of the Kentucky Derby is the horse that can run 1.25 miles.
Well, let me add to that, because it's one of the things people ask, like for people that want to look at a program of form and handicap. It hasn't happened a lot the last few years as we've gotten more horses running on and near the lead. But historically, the horse that wins the Derby is the horse that has a decent burst of speed on the last turn. The Churchill Downs has a huge stretch. Those don't know, it's 1,234 feet. They did that on purpose to be cute, and it's a huge stretch. The quarter pole is actually in the stretch, the 1/4 mile to go, and we call it the 5/16 on the turn. And horses, because of the big field and horses all running together, sometimes very close quarters, a horse that can extricate itself and their jockey and respond to the jockey and make a little burst at that point can often get in front by between the 1/4 and the 1/8. And at that point, not only is that horse caught the others by surprise, but because a lot have hit the wall, there's very little responsiveness. If you look at the last 5 or 10 Derbies, you'll see there's very little passing in the last 1/8 of a mile. It rarely happens. So you want a horse with the burst of speed as well as smart, fast, and everything else.
Well, looking back at the Bluegrass Stakes, Essential Quality did run that last 3 furlongs in right around 36 seconds. And it seemed to me like, looking at the other finishes in prep races, that was the best finish of any horse in the group.
You raise an interesting point. So I do look at the videos, and I look for horses that have that move. And I'll say, for example, Known Agenda had that move in the Florida Derby where he went from 4th, 2.5 back with a quarter to go, and he was a length and a half ahead of the 8th pole. Whereas Highly Motivated, who had led in the Bluegrass, and Essential Quality, who went by him very, very late, they didn't have that. However, at that same point, they gapped. They started to really pull away from the rest of the field at that same point. So for people looking for that move, you wouldn't have seen it because they didn't go around horses, but they did accelerate extensively at that right point. So to your point, it was actually a very race that would help them to run the 1.25 miles in terms of being able to respond to the jock and push out of a pack of horses to get in contention to win or to be in front by the time they turn for the stretch.
6 weeks ago, I didn't think we would see what we usually see at Churchill Downs, and that was a parade of horses coming out of the Todd Pletcher board. It didn't look like he was going to have anybody that would qualify. And then all of a sudden, here he is with 4 qualifiers, and 2 of those coming out of the Wood Memorial. And of course, Known Agenda, which has produced, I think, more Derby winners in recent times. Talk a little bit about the Pletcher horses, and especially Known Agenda coming out of the Florida Derby, a significant move by him there.
Well, Known Agenda will be my second. I will have 6 horses I think we should all focus on here, and they're in slight preference order. Probability, I asked myself how many times a horse would win if you ran the race 100 times to get kind of an assessment of where I like my horses. And he'd be my second, maybe because of the rail. But Known Agenda, for him, he was a good horse last year and this year, but when Todd Pletcher added blinkers, which is the little cloth hood that has a plastic cup over their eyes, anywhere from a 1/16 of a semicircle to a 3/4 semicircle, that helps a horse focus. When he added blinkers 2 races before last, that was the light bulb moment. He won by 11 lengths, and then the Florida Derby, again, he was so responsive, moving from the rail to about the 3-path wide. It was a big move, and then he did really well. He's also by Curlin, who historically, from the sires of horses in this field, has the most winners at 10 furlongs on turf or dirt and stakes. Just to mention, it's very important. Curlin himself was 3rd in the Derby many years ago. Pletcher's other horses, the ones that you mentioned, the 1-2 finishers, Bourbonic, which is a cute name, and Dynamic One. They ran 1-2. They were both long shots in the Wood Memorial. I can't fault them. And again, as I mentioned in one of the other segments, if you get a big price like Bourbonic's, 30 to 1 to start, bet him if you like him. I don't think my take on the race normally is, if these horses all improved about the same rate, or the top ones did, would one horse be able to run faster than the other? And that gets the last thing I look at, is what we call a speed figure, which is the number representing time. So Bourbonic's a little shy of the main contenders, but at this time, the middle of the year, I don't think they make the biggest leaps in terms of their athletic ability and physical prowess, but he still could do it. So Bourbonic and Dynamic One, both the Pletchers, certainly are horses that I can't totally discount to say, not like, for example, Mandaloon, who finished 6th, who I would say has much less of a chance than the others. So that's 3 of the 4. I can't remember the 4th. Sainthood's the 4th Pletcher. He ran 2nd in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, which is run on a different surface, the all-weather surface, and I usually discount that coming into the Derby.
Right. The only aberration there would have been Animal Kingdom, who came from the same race and for some reason won the Derby. So very interesting. Now, of course, we cannot overlook horses coming from California. John Sadler is bringing in somewhat of a surprising winner of the Santa Anita Derby in Rock Your World. How do you think he fits?
Well, he's my top choice. So let me start with that. I looked at the race. I liked him in the Santa Anita Derby. So it's a very interesting horse. Rock Your World began his career on the grass. And some horses historically start on the grass and then they find themselves running on dirt to see if they fit with Derby. An example would be Barbaro, the winner of the Derby many years ago, who ran on the grass, and he ran in a race on dirt that was moved off of the grass because the grass wasn't safe one day. And all of a sudden he blew him away and they said, oh, we might have a Derby horse. That happens occasionally. With Rock Your World, it's really interesting. His trainer, John Sadler, is a really good trainer based in Southern California. He stated the reason that Rock Your World ran on turf his first 2 starts, was because Bob Baffert, one of the world's best trainers who wins a lot of derbies, has so many expensive, good, fast horses in Southern California in the summer and the fall, and he just wanted to avoid them. Now, that could have been tongue-in-cheek. I don't think it was. I think it makes total sense to me. He wanted to avoid them. Rocky World won his first 2 races. He showed maturity coming from off the pace. A lot of young horses just go to the lead and they don't learn to relax. He came from off the pace in 3rd in both of his races to win. The second was a little stakes on the grass. And then in the San Diego Derby, he took it to him. He took the lead. He accelerated. He gave no horse a chance to win. Most importantly, he galloped out. So for folks that don't understand, none of these horses have run 1.25 miles.
Right.
When occasionally you'll see this when you're actually watching a race or a replay, and I noted this, someone include me into it. After the 1.125 miles of the San Diego Derby, the jockey on Rock Your World continued to ride him as if he was still in the race. Not 100%, but 90%. He rode him another 1/8 of a mile. And that's an indication that you're teaching a young horse, again, like a young kid, 15, 18, hey, this is your next task, is to go this extra 1/8. And he rode a mile. No horse in this race was galloped out 1.25 miles except Rock Your World. And he has a presence about him, by the way. I watched the video of him getting off the van after arriving via plane, and he announced his presence many times as loud as he could with loud whinnying. And that's an attitude. That's I'm here, pay attention to me. And I've heard nothing but good things about his training over at Churchill Downs. So he is the course now. He is 5-1 odds to start. That will be adjusted. I don't expect to get 5-1, but I will bet him at 3-1. I think he probably is the horse I have the least question about. He's by a sire called Candy Ride, who also gets a lot of 10 furlong winners on dirt and turf. And his dam sire, just to talk about pedigree, which I use a little bit here, the sire of his dam, which is his mother, is Empire Maker, who won the Belmont Stakes at 12 furlongs. So there's no question Rock Your World can run 1.25 miles.
He would have loved rain too with Empire Maker, huh? I think
it did, yeah, we're gonna have a dry one, but it would be nice.
Well, I'll tell you what. You mentioned Baffert. We cannot talk about a Kentucky Derby without, talking about Bob Baffert. I didn't think Authentic would win last year, even though I bet him in the futures pool. But it's interesting. He brings in Medina Spirit, who quite honestly was probably his 3rd or 4th stringer out there. Life is Good was going to be the horse for him. He's just had some bad luck. But once again, I'll tell you what, if you were to, walk up to me on Monday and say Bob Baffert won the Kentucky Derby, I'd say, well, I guess so. Does this horse have any chance?
So the answer is yes. It's very interesting because the way the race shapes up in terms of who might lead, there's no real horse that has to have lead. There's a horse named Soup and Sandwich way outside who's going to have to get middle position and may find himself on the lead before the turn. Known Agenda is more tactical. There's really no need to lead types. Hot Rod Charlie won the Louisiana Derby on the lead. Medina Spirit won the Robert Lewis Stakes in January on the lead. Of course, that's Baffert's style as a California trainer. He wants his horses to show a lot of speed. His last 2 races, he just kind of ran around the track in the same position, 2nd and 3rd in both those races. He ran 2nd to Life is Good, then 2nd to Rock Your World. But if Baffert strategizes to say to jockey John Velasquez, I want you on the lead, as we've seen the last few derbies, those horses, when they get into a steady stride on the lead, can really find themselves confident and tough to pass. So I would not rule Medina Spirit out. I think he's a long shot, 15-1 to start. He'll probably be less than that because it is Baffert. But still, I wouldn't talk somebody out of him. I personally think he's very probable to run 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I don't think he can win because he doesn't have that huge turn of foot, as we say, that kick somewhere between the quarter pole and the 8th pole.
Yeah. My friend, the trainer Tom Amos, always indicates to me, usually when he comes north after the season down there in New Orleans, that the Derby horses at the fairgrounds are not quite at the level of those. And usually a Pletcher shipper or a California shipper comes in and wins the Louisiana Derby. We had a winner this year in Hot Rod Charlie. and I owned by five, I think they were football players from Brown University. A very interesting horse and a California horse. Do you think the Hot Rod has a chance here?
I think he has a chance. I think 8-1 is lower than I think he is based on probability. The issue with the Louisiana Derby, which Hot Rod Charlie won, Midnight Bourbon was second, and Obesos was third, and they're all back, is that at the end of the day, the last thing I look at is how fast they ran. We use a speed figure, and there's various speed figures they use, and that just quantifies time. That enables us to compare one track to another. And I'll digress for 1 second. The speed figure is important at the end when you look at horses. You say, well, if this horse ran its best race and this other horse ran its best race, which one could run faster? And you're estimating, also trying to extrapolate improvement. But the speed figure is based on the fact that each track is a living, breathing thing. They have different compositions of sand and silt and clay and different banks and different circumferences. And if you took the same exact field at one day and ran them at Churchill, and the next day, let's say at Keeneland and Lexington or at Santa Anita, you'd get a different time, and that's only a function of the track. So that's where the figure comes in. The reason I mention that is just to put it in perspective. Hot Rod Charlie improved in his second start as a 3-year-old. His Equibase figure, the one I used as a main reference point, was 99. And the main contenders in this race are 103, 106, 108, 19, and 112. Now, he can improve, but we're getting in May again. I don't expect big improvement, not 6 or 8 points. And at a mile and a quarter, a point is about a fifth of a second or a length. So he'd have to improve by 4 or 5 lengths. Over whatever other horses of the 5 or 6. Not everyone's going to continue to improve, but there's 4 or 5 that are still on patterns for improvement, physical improvement, I mean, which means they're going to run faster or as fast. He'd have to improve a lot more than they would, even if they ran about the same race that they ran a month ago in order to win. And that was my knock and why I didn't use any of the horses from the Louisiana Derby in this group of contenders, which we'll get to.
Okay, let's go back to Essential Quality for just a moment and his stirring stretch run in the Bluegrass Stakes. If you like Essential Quality, what's not to like about the horse that he went head-to-head with, Highly Motivated?
I'm so glad you mentioned it. Highly Motivated will be my 4th of the 6, I said. So right now, Rock Your World, Known Agenda, Essential Quality, Highly Motivated. In terms of odds, Highly Motivated looks to be the best. He's opening at 10-1. Look, a horse that gets beat ahead is not 5 times less likely to win than the horse that beat him ahead. So Essential Quality is 2-1, Highly Motivated is 10-1. That suggests in terms of probabilities, he's not. And I liked Highly Motivated that he did everything right but win the race. He took it to him. He made the lead on fairly slow fractions, but as you said, they came home in very good time. And both he and Essential Quality started to open up on the rest of the field, which is that same move. He's by Into Mischief. Into Mischief wasn't known as a sire of horses that get 10 furlongs until Authentic won. You know, the people talk about this hasn't happened, this hasn't happened. Something is a valid statistic, an invalid statistic until it's not. So Authentic won last year. He won the Derby. Into Mischief certainly could do it. Highly Motivated is making his 3rd start of the year. So many horses this year, Gary, are making their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th starts. They're much more lightly raced. So that kind of improvement can absolutely take place. And I think it's pretty interesting. I will never hesitate to bet Highly Motivated in the Derby on Saturday because I think he is moving in the right direction.
Sounds like your superfecta's coming together here.
It is coming together. Except I will mention the superfecta, which I didn't mention earlier, which is 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. On Derby Day, the superfecta, which normally every other day of the year has a 10-cent minimum, will have a $1 minimum. So it becomes a much more expensive bet. 4 superfecta boxes, $24, and 5's $120. So it's almost a throwaway bet because there are so many chances. It's 20 times 19 times 18 times 17. Whatever that number is, I guarantee you there's many chances. Superfecta is a fun bet, but more like a trifecta, definitely a trifecta horse.
Yeah, there are ways that you can make it a little cheaper. You don't have to box them. You can
True.
You can work with it. Well, let's talk about the best trainer never to win the Kentucky Derby, and that's Steve Asmussen. I suppose his #1 contender is Superstock, who won the Arkansas Derby, a race that set up perfectly for him because he got to stalk off 2 speed horses and then pass them in the stretch. What kind of chance do you think Asmussen has to finally get off the schneid here?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't remember, and again, in 50 years of going to races and watching derbies, I don't remember the winner of one of the major prep races being 31 on the morning line. I just don't remember it. You know, one of the major Arkansas Derby, you know, that's rare. Yes, the race was very fast, and he benefited from some bad decisions on the part of a couple of horses that both wanted to lead at any cost and hoped to win the battle and the war, which rarely works out well. But he was good as a 2-year-old, and then he won the Arkansas Derby. Now his speed figure, I'm going to say, was 106. So when I look at Known Agenda, 112, and I look at Essential Quality and Highly Motivated, 108, I say he's there. He is within a length or two of those. If that race wasn't a fluke and the pace was fast, but he also closed it to a very slow pace in the street sense, which was 2 turns at Churchill. That was a race they ran the half mile in 49 and change. And so I have no knock on Superstock, particularly, again, when you get higher odds, you have to make allowances for betting on a horse that may not be as good, but might just do it.
You know, the Tampa Bay Derby seems like a lifetime ago in terms of Derby preps. But one of the things that I have noticed over the years, it also is a deep, sandy track down there at Tampa. And many times, I remember Musket Man came up and did well. Horses that run well at Tampa come to Churchill Downs and do pretty good. Not just the Derby runners, but also those that spent the winter down there. And now I'm looking at Helium. How does he fit in numbers wise?
Well, Helium is the other of the 3 undefeated horses after Essential Quality and Rock Your World. And he does not fit in numbers wise. He's only 94. And my big concern with Helium, horses that normally run the Tampa Bay Derby, which is run the first week in March, will choose to run in another race. So there's 2, I'll have to say, knocks on Helium. One is he's been training up to this race. It's been 8 weeks. I think that's too long for a horse to train up to run 1.25 miles. Secondly, the Tampa Bay Derby was 1 1/16 miles. Every other horse in the field's run 1 mile. Almost every horse in the field has run 1 1/8 miles in their most recent prep. And third, the horse that Helium beat by 3/4 of a length in Tampa Bay Derby is a horse named Hidden Stash, who did run since then, and he ran 4th, beaten 10 lengths in the Bluegrass Stakes. So it wasn't very flattering to Helium. So on those 3 tokens, he's just not a horse I'm interested in.
This is, I think, my sort of favorite part of Derby handicapping, and that's surfing around looking for a long shot. I'm just wondering, who are your long shots for Derby 147? And if I'm looking for a price, where might I go? Who's sticking out?
Let me mention Bourbonic, who we talked about earlier briefly. Certainly worth a look because he's 30, and also Soup and Sandwich, who's 30, who ran second in Known Agenda. Soup and Sandwich has a lot of speed, so he's going to have to get good position, but he hung on very well in the Florida Derby. So,
let me ask you a question about the post position draw. I've often felt that, the horse that has, since we have this point system, that the horse that has the most points on the Derby trail ought to be able to pick the post position draw instead of this pill pull that we have that's the traditional way. What do you think of that idea? Should the race be more handicapped, or do you like the traditional blind draw?
I like it random. Churchill experimented many years with a hybrid where they drew the pills and that person got to pick their post.
Right.
And that was for fun. And I wasn't happy with that either because, I guess to some trainers, they want some post position based on their horse's affinity for where they like to run. Some don't care. A horse that's going to drop back to last, it doesn't matter. A horse that wants to lead doesn't want to be in the inside. You normally would want to be on the inside in a route race, a 2-turn race. I like the randomness of it. It's unfortunate, of course, that some horses get good and bad posts, but this is a race, in my opinion, where every horse is bringing its A game, and they're all peaking at the same time. And one, like I said, one of these boys is going to emerge a man. And if they can overcome, the thing that makes a champion is overcoming adversity, whether it's a little nagging ache or pain, whether it's a sloppy track, whether it's getting bumped early in the race, whether it's maybe having some traffic and getting out and still having that mental attitude that I'm going to win. And I think the random draw lends itself to really proving that the Derby winner had all that adversity and still came out on top.
I used to write a very dangerous article when I worked for the TV station, and it was called Horses That Cannot Win the Derby. Are there horses in here that simply, like Brooklyn Strong and Keep Me in Mind and Obesos, that simply cannot win the Derby?
Obesos is not one of those. As I said, any horse that finishes worse than 4th, I don't think can get here from there. There's also the speed figure issues of horses that just need to improve. So I would say if I was writing an article, it would be I'd write the first paragraph saying, I know this is a bad take because I know right away that it's absolutely just asking for trouble. But you know, you got Helium off 8 weeks is a problem. Hidden Stash was fourth. Mandaloon was sixth. The horses like a King, unfortunately, and Sainthood coming out of the Jeff Ruby, which it can be a good race, but it was slower. And even though you can translate using speed figures, the all-weather track, which is Turfway because they run a lot in the winter, to the others, I think there's only 5 or 6 that I think, when I say can't, they probably have 5% or less chance to win the race. The rest is very difficult to draw those little lines in the sand with.
There's always been Mind That Bird and Giacomo, right?
That's right. Yes, there have been.
Ellis, your final picks, what would they be?
Well, so in preference order, Rock Your World, I think I would bet him at about 3-1 or more as a win bet. I would probably make 3 win bets in the race, 2 of my top 3, and then one of the long shots. Known Agenda, to Rock Your World, number 15, by the way. Known Agenda, number 1. And the Essential Quality is the favorite. Now, we'll use him in exactas because at 2-1, I don't think he's the value for a win bet. And then the next 3 of the long shots, I'm going to pick 1 or 2 of these, and I'm absolutely going to bet win or win place at about maybe 15-1 or more. Even win place and show, there's nothing wrong with that. That's Highly Motivated, number 17, and the Super Stock, number 18. Again, slight preference order. As for the exotics, again, I think the take your rubber band off the wallet philosophy holds true. You're going to bet a couple, 3 horses to win or win place, show, whatever your preference is. Have some fun. Be risk tolerant. For the exacta, I don't want to mess around here. A 6-horse exacta box and 20 horses gives you 40% of the field. You still have a lot of ways to lose. For $1 minimum, which you can bet online, it's a $30 bet. You win if any 2 of the 6 come in first and second, any order. And you're hoping one of the long shots wins or comes in second. You turn that $30 into $100 or $200-300 if you're lucky. And then if you want the trifecta, again, this is something you'd more do if you were at a party and want to go in partners. It's still not inexpensive. It's not expensive either. It's $60. So a 50-cent trifecta box with those 6 horses is $60. You actually have 120 chances. But again, it's 120 chances out of thousands. And you win if any 3 of the 6 come in first, second, and third in any order. And that's how I do it. Certainly, you could do other things, as Gary talked about earlier. You can do a key, we said, if you really thought, for example, Essential Quality could win. You play Essential Quality on top in an exacta trifecta and take 6 or 7 horses to come in second or third. Do it that way.
Okay, Ellis, thank you so much. It's been such a joy to have you on, and we're just delighted. And I'll be sitting here in my house betting on my phone, and I'll be following your advice. By the way, in my final pick, I'm going to bet Brad Cox to win. I think it's either going to be the lesser Brad Cox horse, which is Mandaloon, and Essential Quality. I think one of those is going to win. I don't know why, but I just kind of have that feeling. I love the finish of Essential Quality in the Bluegrass Stakes. So those are our picks for Derby 147. Ellis Starr, thank you so much, and I hope that we can get together in person pretty soon, and as soon as this pandemic gets over.
I'm certainly looking forward to it. And for folks, you can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at UberCapper, and you can see my plays as well in writing.